I contemplated not making a video on this, but seems more and more YouTube personalities are wading into the mire and talking about gun control. In the wake of the Parkland, Florida school shooting, they are deciding that their opinion matters. Most of them being people who have never been around a gun, held a gun. They have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And coming from a place of ignorance, they are the most vociferous proponents of gun control measures, claiming common sense gun laws are necessary to curb more tragedies such as Columbine, Sandy Hook, Parkland. Now, I'm under no illusions that my opinion actually matters. I am just one face on YouTube, one incredibly ugly face on YouTube with a voice, but something that I have going for me is that I have been around guns a solid part of my life. Even before I joined the Marine Corps, I worked with guns. I had been around them. I had a very, very healthy respect for them. Even after I left the Marines, I'm a gun-carrying person. I can legally carry my weapon. I had to convince, or at least I was one of a few people who had to convince my state that the weapon of choice for me was actually a safer alternative than the gun that is issued many times to police. The Glock, the 9mm parabellum round, is actually a very dangerous round when you get right down to it. The overpenetration probability is astronomically high when compared to, say, the 5.56 round used by the AR-15, the M16, or the 5.7x28 round that my FN-57 and my AR-57 use. I had to convince them that the 5.7x28mm was actually a safer alternative, despite sounding very scary. After all, 5.7mm. That sounds like it's bigger than the 5.56mm round used in the AR-15. It's really not, but hey, whatever. I am a person who has had to draw his weapon and use it as the proverbial good guy in a scenario, the good guy with a gun. I've done it twice, and once against a bad guy with a gun. So I'm not coming at this from a position of ignorance. I'm not coming at this from a position of blind support of the Second Amendment. The truth of the matter is that there are, I think, limitations that can and should be placed in a time of peace. No one really needs a fully automatic weapon, as far as I'm concerned. Even I can say that. The military doesn't even use them, aside from the SCAR-L, the M4 SOCOM, I think it's called, the M4 that's issued to many Special Operations Command personnel, such as Navy SEALs, the MP5 SEALs use, and the M27 IAR, which is used in a squad support role with the Marines, taking over for the M249. We don't really use them. We don't really use them because it doesn't really matter unless you're in a position where fully automatic fire is the only way to keep yourselves alive. And if you're in that position, you're probably in a lot of trouble. But here we are. Here we are talking about gun control in the wake of another school shooting. Now, people think that this is actually very common in the United States. In fact, many of the most loudly screaming that we need common sense gun laws are people from outside the United States who have absolutely no idea of our history, how one of the first reasons that we went to war for independence was because the king was demanding our weapons. Concord and Lexington happened when we refused to turn over our powder at Concord. That's why the Second Amendment is, well, that's part of why the Second Amendment is there. And So we have a unique history when it comes to guns. We've routinely had to defend ourselves from Native American raids and whatnot in the 17 and 1800s. The War of 1812 was fought by a militia for much of it. We've had many wars in which a militia played a part, even up to the Civil War. And so we are unique, I think, and many would agree, in our reverence for the armed man who could be an equalizer against tyranny. Even the founding fathers recognized that a government will eventually devolve into tyranny. And it's kind of funny to watch people right now, the same people pining for, quote, common sense gun control measures are also the same people saying that President Trump is a fascist. They want the government to confiscate the big black rifles, because it's big, black, and scary, which in pretty much any other situation would pretty much be a really racist statement. But they ignore that they also consider President Trump and this government tyrannical and fascist. And as we've all seen, when a fascist government decides to take the weapons from the people, there's no stopping them from the absolutely terrible acts they commit. 160 million, I believe it is, killed in China as the communists took over. 60 million killed in Russia, many of them under Stalin. A very basic 6 million Jews killed by the Nazis throughout Europe. And that's not including the gypsies, the homosexuals, the mentally infirm, the physically infirm, the intelligentsia. And they want to act like, it's actually kind of funny to watch it now, because 2 weeks ago they were screaming that police shouldn't even have guns, that they shouldn't be really armed. There were people spreading around this video, and they've been doing it for a year or two now, where there is a crazy man with a knife in England, and there's 5 cops around him, all with trash can lids, pretty much trying to corral him. And people saying this is what cops in the United States need to be like, not shooting people, despite the fact that that guy could have easily killed 2 or 3 of those cops with that knife with a good slash. And I guarantee you, in a month or two, as this dies down, we're going to go back to cops shouldn't be armed and cops are too bloodthirsty. But for right now, it's only cops should have guns. It's this mental gymnastics I will never understand, because I'm just not that stupid, I guess. And to watch how they play this entire thing is disingenuous. What's more, the majority of crimes committed with guns are not committed with an AR-15, an AK-47, any real assault weapon, quote unquote. They're committed with handguns. I believe the most commonly used weapon is a Glock 9mm pistol for most crimes. Why aren't we talking about banning handguns? There's actually a much stronger case to be made that with the vast majority of gun crimes being committed by pistols, maybe they should be outlawed. But no, because a rifle is used in quite a few mass shootings, it's easier to point to and say, that needs to go. And then what happens after those rifles are gone? Well, now the handguns are the only things that are going. And what do? Now those need to go. We need to ban all guns, because a gun, its only purpose is to kill. Yes, its purpose is to defend. Its purpose is to take a life. More often than not, when a gun is drawn, one party backs off. Why is that? Because they don't want to be shot. It's an equalizer. The vast majority of people who draw their weapon never fire it. This is true for cops too, and the mass majority of cops never even draw their arm in anger. But these people want us to believe that if we just get rid of guns, it'll be so much safer, ignoring the fact that criminals, by their very definition, don't pay attention to the laws. Many of the gangs that use guns get them through the black market, I guess you could call it. In the 90s, we stopped shipments of weapons, fully automatic weapons that were banned and destined for the Crips. I believe it was in Los Angeles, the port of Los Angeles. It wasn't law-abiding citizens looking to buy them, it was criminals. I mean, the war on drugs has gone so well, hasn't it? You're not supposed to use drugs. That's how we stopped all the drug use in the United States, right? We don't have an opium epidemic right now. No, there's no OxyContin issue. There's no Percocet issue. That was stopped because of the war on drugs. You're not supposed to steal. That's illegal. We don't have any people robbing banks or anything like that in the United States. Nope. You see where I'm getting at? Just because you outlaw something doesn't mean that the criminals are going to listen. If you outlaw the guns, you take it away from 50% of the people, and those people are the good guys. Obviously, I'm pulling that number out of my ass, but I'm saying that 50% of good people and 50% of bad people. Obviously, that's not the real numbers, and even I accept that. It's hyperbolic, but whatever. But here's a question. How did Timothy McVeigh kill 169 people and injure, 460 someone others? How did the 19 terrorists on September 11th kill over 2,000 Americans? How did the 1993 World Trade Center bombing happen? How did the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing happen? Was it with guns? Yeah, the Boston Marathon bombing, it turned into a shootout when they found flashbang and speed bump. But it wasn't committed with a gun. It was committed with bombs. The FBI and the Broward County Sheriff made 39 calls to Nicholas Cruz's house. 39 over 2 or 3 years. And they didn't do anything. Even I'll say that the comment allegedly made by Nicholas Cruz on a YouTube video in September saying he wanted to be a professional school shooting, and the FBI apparently responded. There was nothing they could have really done. He didn't make a threat against any person or any school, any place. There's really nothing the law can do there. They could have committed him, I suppose, but there was nothing to arrest him for. But there were more targeted threats he made that the sheriff, the police, the FBI ignored. And yet people want to say it's a problem with the guns. No, it was the fact that the police simply didn't care. If you see something, say something, and, then the police will ignore it. That should terrify you more. The FBI is more interested in this Russia collusion story that's more and more appearing to be a non-issue with President Trump right now. And they possibly could have stopped this shooting in Parkland. I'm trying to really gather my thoughts as I do this, because I'm doing this unscripted. Evil people will exist no matter what we do. We see that every day. We see that as stabbings happen in China where 37 people are killed. We see that when the truck of peace shows up in Germany, France, Australia, England. We see that when bombings happen. Evil's going to exist no matter what. There's nothing we can do to stop it. The only thing we can do is confront the evil. When a drunk driver kills someone, we don't blame the car for what they did. We blame the driver. When a Muslim extremist commits an act of terrorism that kills innocent people, we blame the individual and not the ideology. I'm not going to go into that, but that's how it's looked at. the NRA is blamed for the actions of people that aren't part of the NRA. And they are unique in that. The gun is blamed whenever somebody goes on a shooting spree. It's a tool. I could take my gun, slam it down right here, and barring some, misfire, the gun's not going to kill anybody without me picking it up, pointing it, and pulling the trigger. It's an inanimate object. Power itself is not good or evil. It's the intent of the individual that makes the action good or evil. Gun control will never work. It doesn't even work in Australia. They're doing another buyback, or they did another buyback, despite banning guns in 98 or something like that, after some major shooting at Port Arthur, I think it was. Why are they doing that? I thought there was no guns in Australia. Maybe I'm just misinterpreting the claims of many of the regressive left when they say there's gun control works. Look at Australia. Look at Canada. Look at all these European nations. I think what we need to look at is the mental health issues that many of these people have, whether they're white, black, Native American, Asian, doesn't matter. Many of these people are mentally infirm. They are mentally unstable individuals. It's kind of interesting how, everybody wants to say, only white people are mentally unstable and they somehow live through these things. Well, no, the Columbine killers killed themselves. It's actually kind of there's a lot of them that survive this. Nidal Hassan, 49 people killed or injured on Fort Hood. We need to look at some of these people and we need to consider helping them before they become this. What are the odds that Nicholas Cruz could have been helped with psychiatric aid? I'm not talking medication. As somebody who has used lithium to combat his bipolar disorder and depression, it didn't help me. It made me feel like absolute crap. Got rid of my appetite and I wouldn't eat for days because of it. I had to actually seek help and learn to live with it. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people understand. When you're dealing with mental illness, you're never going to cure it. You're only going to help somebody learn to live with it. And more importantly, we need to re-evaluate the concept of gun-free zones. The Aurora, Colorado shooter killed people in a gun-free zone. Parkland was a gun-free zone. Sandy Hook was a gun-free zone. We put up these huge signs saying, this is a gun-free zone. And these people look at these signs and go, I can kill a bunch of people in there and they're not going to be able to do anything. If you look at it, some of the states and some of the cities with the most strict gun control laws on the books are bloodbaths. Chicago, LA, New York City. Significant gun laws on the books, and yet they have such huge murder rates committed with guns. Handguns, not rifles. But you look at Alaska, Texas, many of the Midwestern states, relatively speaking, lacks gun laws, and they don't seem to have an issue with this. Sure, it occurs every once in a while, but it just doesn't seem to be as common as it is in California, New York, etc. Maybe we need to look at that. Maybe it's things other than the guns and the need for gun laws that really need to be reevaluated. What are gun laws going to do? If the laws already on the books allegedly are not stopping this, according to the regressive left, and you hear this constantly, the gun show loophole, selling private sales. The Obama administration, I believe in 2016, did a sting-like operation where they tried to find gun owners who would sell across state lines in private transactions and not do background checks like they were required to. And they found that something like 95% of the people contacted refused to do it. They would demand a background check be done. This is the same Obama administration, by the way, that lost track of over 100 rifles and guns that were supposed to be used in Operation Fast and Furious, one of which was used to kill a Border Patrol agent doing his job. We have lived 50, 60, 70 years where we haven't had to worry about war, really, coming to our shores. And we've allowed ourselves to fall into this narrative of the guns only need to be used for hunting, ignoring what the Founding Fathers intended, defense against a tyrannical government. And people will say, if the government wants to kill you, they're going to kill you. There's nothing you can do. Where at the same time, they'll point to Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, where an armed, essentially militia was able to stop the most powerful military in the world and do a lot of damage. It's kind of funny how they'll do that. They'll say, if we look at these instances, this is a large military, professional military, that is stopped by armed civilians, a militia, essentially. And then they'll turn around and go, but we can't do that. Why not? Why wouldn't we be able to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government? Once again, many of the same people calling for gun control, the removal of guns by the government, and yes, they exist, are the same people screaming, Trump is a fascist. I will never understand this doublethink, the mental gymnastics needed to do this. I never will. The truth of the matter is that evil will always exist. A good guy with a gun can and will stop a bad guy with a gun. And I know what people are saying right now. At Parkland, there was the officer, the school resource officer, who never once met the shooter. Never once met the shooter. This good guy with a gun couldn't even stop him. And it comes out that, just as I expected, he was derelict in his duty. I said this privately and publicly. This cop was either asleep at the job or derelict in his duty. And it comes out that the guy stood outside with his gun drawn for 4 minutes while the kid was shooting students. He put his own life, his own well-being before the well-being of innocent children. There was a mentality, there is a requirement when you put on that uniform to serve and protect. You put the well-being of innocent people before yourself. You have to be willing to charge in there and kill if necessary. If that cop had done his job, he wouldn't have saved everybody. But the death toll could have been lessened. I'm under no illusions that he could have stopped the entire thing. The police completely ignored what was going on. They ignored the signs. And then when push came to shove, the cop did nothing. Maybe it's time to reevaluate ourselves. Maybe it's time that we accepted that laws aren't working right now. There are some gun control measures that we can all agree with. But it's rather interesting that common sense for many of the people screaming for common sense gun laws are get rid of the guns. No. You want to stop something like this from happening again? Yeah, maybe the answer is to put armed guards in the schools, to arm the teachers. Now, there are things that you can buy now to jam under the door to prevent it from being opened in the case of a school shooter. There are options out there. But clearly, making these places gun-free zones, it's not working.